Picture a massive, messy Excel spreadsheet, thousands of rows of raw data, columns just stretching out of sight. I mean, it is visually overwhelming.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, imagine turning that chaos into a beautiful, interactive, executive-ready dashboard in just 3 minutes. And the kicker? Zero coding required.
Yeah, it sounds like an absolute magic trick, honestly, but it is entirely possible. And, well, it is fundamentally changing how we interact with information.
Welcome to the deep dive. We are exploring a really fascinating no-code framework for building complex Excel dashboards using Claude AI. We are so glad you are here.
We have a great roadmap for you today. We will start by examining the raw data itself and, the biggest mistake people make when feeding it to an AI.
Right.
From there, we are diving into a brilliant meta-prompting technique. That is where we actually get Claude to write its own instructions. Then we will look at the mechanics of generating the dashboard. And finally, we will explore how to iterate and edit the software using plain English.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can construct a masterpiece, we have to deeply understand the raw materials. So let us talk about the data we are starting with.
Right, so the raw materials here are incredibly common. We are not talking about some pristine, hyperstructured SQL database. You just need a basic, everyday Excel file. The source material uses a classic Superstore sales file as its primary example.
So we are talking about standard everyday business data, like the kind of file that gets emailed around 100 times a week.
Precisely that. You have columns for customer names. You have, sales numbers, profit margins, order dates, product categories, and shipping regions.
Yeah.
It does not need to be perfectly clean. It just needs to be the raw ledger of a business.
There's something almost philosophical about a raw ledger. It is a pure record of human behavior. Someone bought something on a Tuesday. Someone returned something from Seattle. It is all right there.
Right, and the challenge has always been extracting the actual story from that endless ledger. But here is the major issue the source highlights. People take this massive file, they upload it to Claude, and they make a catastrophic, yet entirely common mistake.
They just type, create a dashboard from this file.
Yes. They type that exact, overly simplistic phrase. It is like they treat the AI like a magical vending machine and just expect a miracle.
But the results are usually pretty uninspired. I mean, they're flat.
They are completely flat. And there is a deeply technical reason for that. When you give a large language model an ambiguous command, it regresses to the mean.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it outputs the most statistically average, generic response possible. Claude is essentially being forced to guess what actually matters to your specific business.
It is like dumping a million Lego bricks on the floor and telling an architect to build something, but refusing to tell them if it's a hospital or a theme park.
Exactly.
You have the pieces, but absolutely no vision.
That is a purchased analogy. The AI is powerful, but it is not a mind reader. It really lacks the human context of data consumption.
So why is Claude's default output so underwhelming when given a basic command?
Well, because it fundamentally lacks audience context and specific business goals. Think about the psychology of a C-suite executive. Like, a CEO looking at a dashboard needs a rapid, high-level overview of total revenue and profit.
They want the macro story.
Exactly. But a CFO might care much more about granular profit margins, areas of localized loss, and specific quarterly performance trends.
Right.
When you just say create a dashboard, the AI has zero concept of who the end user actually is.
It just throws arbitrary data visualizations at a wall.
Yes. It picks metrics at random. It might highlight a bizarre geographical trend in the Midwest that no one in your entire leadership team actually cares about. Or it might bury your most critical key performance indicators at the very bottom of the page in a tiny font.
Oh, wow.
Without business context, data is just noise.
So basic instructions just lead to basic, uninspired results.
That is exactly the dynamic we are trying to avoid.
Which brings us to a really fascinating pivot. If a basic human-written command fails to capture the complexity of the data, how do we get the perfect blueprint?
Right.
The answer is, we don't write it ourselves. We make the AI do it.
This is the absolute core trick of the entire framework. It is called meta-prompting. You upload the data file to Claude, but you explicitly tell it not to build the dashboard yet. You, like, put the brakes on the
You
executive.
deliberately hold it back from its primary function.
You do. Instead, you ask Claude to act as a top-level expert prompt engineer. You feed it the narrative context. You say, this data is about regional sales and profit. The final dashboard is going to be presented to the CEO and CFO,
Mm-hmm.
and it needs to be visually simple but strategically deep.
You are assigning it a highly specific persona.
Yes, and then you give it constraints. You tell Claude that the prompt it writes must explicitly ask for key metrics: revenue, profit margin, total orders,
Yeah.
unique customers. You specify that you want more than 10 distinct charts. You demand interactive filtering capabilities. And you insist on clear business insights.
I have to admit, I still wrestle with prompt drift myself.
Oh, most people do. It is a massive friction point.
Trying to manually write a perfect 50-line prompt from scratch usually leads to sheer frustration. You tweak one sentence in paragraph 3, and suddenly the AI forgets the primary instruction from paragraph 1.
Exactly.
Making the AI do the heavy lifting to structure its own prompt feels like a massive cognitive relief.
It entirely solves the blank page problem. You are basically delegating the hardest part of prompt engineering to the engine itself, the syntax and the structural logic.
Here is where it gets really interesting. How does this meta-prompting actually change Claude's underlying understanding of the dataset?
Well, what is fascinating here is it forces the AI's attention mechanism to analyze the columns and the business context before it shifts into coding mode. When you ask for a prompt first, Claude has to deeply read your Excel file and map out the semantic relationships. It realizes that order dates connect logically to revenue over time. It sees that shipping regions connect to geographical profit margins.
Wow.
Yeah, it builds a robust conceptual framework of your business reality first.
So it provides the missing business context and a clear job.
Precisely. You are forcing the language model to slow down. You are making it map the entire strategic landscape before it ever picks up a hammer to start building.
And what it produces is incredible. It writes a prompt that is far more robust and far more aligned with its own architecture than a human could typically write.
It speaks its own native language better than we ever could.
So we have this highly detailed AI-generated blueprint. We have the architecture perfectly mapped out. Now it is time to actually construct the building.
This is the generation phase. And there is a very specific non-negotiable workflow you need to follow here to make it work.
Walk us through the mechanics of that phase.
First, you copy that massive, detailed prompt that Claude just generated for you. Then, and this is the crucial step, you open a brand new chat window in Claude.
You demand a clean slate.
You absolutely have to. You upload your original Excel file one more time into this fresh chat. You paste the new, highly detailed prompt that Claude just wrote, and you finally hit send.
Now, the output we are looking for here is not a Python script or a complicated back-end application. It generates an HTML file, a simple file format that displays pages in your web browser.
Yes, a single, self-contained HTML file.
For those navigating this, an HTML file in this context is incredible because it contains all the underlying JavaScript and visualization logic locally. It requires no back-end server or database connection to run.
That is the technical beauty of it. All the charting libraries like Chart.js or D3 and all the JSON data parsed from your Excel file are baked right into that single document. You download that file to your desktop, you double-click it, and it opens right up in Chrome or Safari.
Whoa. Imagine turning thousands of raw rows into an interactive dashboard in 3 minutes.
It is genuinely wild the first time you see it execute successfully.
You are looking at a browser window where you can instantly see which specific region has the highest profit. You can hover over a bar chart and see which month had the strongest sales velocity.
Yeah.
The source material emphasizes how you can track unique customers and profit margins instantly, just by opening a local file.
The friction is entirely gone. You do not need an enterprise license for Power BI. You do not need to spend 3 weeks learning Tableau. You do not need to write a single complex SQL query or a line of Python.
Right.
The AI writes all the necessary code in the background, renders the visualization logic, and simply hands you the finished interactive product.
But let me push back on the workflow for a second. Why do we have to open a brand new chat? Why not just paste the new prompt into the existing conversation and keep moving?
Because of how a large language model manages its context window, a new chat flushes the previous context entirely. It ensures the AI's attention mechanism only focuses on technical execution.
I see.
If you stay in that first chat, the AI's context window is cluttered with the previous meta conversation about how to write prompts. It might get confused and try to write another prompt or explain the theory of dashboards to you instead of just writing the pure HTML code.
The fresh chat prevents old instructions from confusing the build.
Exactly. You want the AI acting purely as a senior developer in this second phase. The strategic planning phase is officially over. The architect has left the building. Now it is time for the engineers to build.
So we have a final dashboard. It is sitting there in our browser. It is interactive. It is fast. But what happens when reality hits? What if the CEO looks at it and absolutely hates the line charts or wants the colors changed to match the company branding? Sponsor message to be inserted here.
That brings us to the final and, frankly, the most revolutionary step in this entire framework. You do not have to accept the first draft.
Which is a relief because in the history of business, no first draft has ever been perfect.
Not once. And here is the breakthrough. You definitely do not have to open up an IDE and touch any of that underlying HTML or JavaScript to fix it.
So what does this all mean? It means you can edit using plain English.
We really are. It completely upends the traditional software development lifecycle.
How does this conversational editing change the traditional workflow of data analysis?
Think about the historical bottleneck we have all suffered through. If a CEO wanted a specific chart changed from a scatter plot to a bar graph, they had to submit a Jira ticket or email a data analyst.
Oh, yeah.
That analyst had to find time in their sprint. They had to open the software, rewrite the underlying query, adjust the visualization parameters, export it, and email it back.
Right.
That cycle could take hours, sometimes days, just for a simple cosmetic change. Now that bottleneck is entirely eradicated. Anyone can act as a creative director for their own data.
We manage the vision while the AI handles the execution.
Yes, and that is what true democratization of data looks like.
Wow.
The source text gives some incredible examples of this iteration process. You look at your new dashboard in your browser, you decide a chart isn't conveying the right message. You just go back to that active Claude chat and you type, replace the line chart in the top right with a bar chart, because it is much easier to compare regional categories.
Just conversationally, like you are sitting next to a human designer and pointing at the screen.
Exactly like that. You can be incredibly specific. You can say, add interactive drop-down filters for region, product category, and order date. Or move the KPI summary cards to the very top of the page so they are the first thing the CEO sees.
You can even give it highly abstract, qualitative feedback, right? I mean, you don't have to use technical terminology.
That is the beauty of natural language processing. You can literally make this entire dashboard easier for a busy executive to understand in under 30 seconds.
Wow.
Or you can be blunt, I do not like the color scheme. Change it to a corporate blue and gray palette. Make the font larger.
And Claude just parses that intent and rewrites the underlying file.
Instantly. It updates the JavaScript logic, adjusts the CSS styling, gives you a brand new HTML file to download, and you simply refresh your browser. The layout, the interactive filters, the visual hierarchy, they all shift to perfectly match your conversational requests. You are iterating on complex code at the speed of thought.
It's like moving from developing film in a darkroom to using a digital camera. The feedback loop goes from days to seconds.
And that speed changes how you interact with the data itself. When the cost of iteration drops to zero, you become much more curious. You try out 10 different visualizations just to see which one reveals the most compelling story.
Let's bring this all together. If we look at the core philosophy of this deep dive, it's actually beautifully simple. Do not make the AI guess.
Right.
By taking a moment to use Claude to write its own prompt first, by utilizing that meta-prompting trick, you give it the exact conceptual architecture required. It turns a messy wall of raw data into an insightful executive-level dashboard.
The mechanics are easy, but the implications are staggering. It raises a massive question for the industry. If anyone, from a marketing manager to a CEO, can instantly generate and iteratively edit a C-suite level data dashboard using nothing but plain English, how will the role of traditional data analysts evolve over the next 5 years? Will we all transition from being data diggers to becoming data directors?
That is a fundamental shift in the entire knowledge economy. It moves the value away from syntax and coding and places it squarely on critical thinking and asking the right questions. We highly encourage you to take a raw spreadsheet you use every single day.
Something you are deeply familiar with.
And try this exact two-step meta-prompting method. See what stories it reveals about your own data when you remove the technical friction.
You might be profoundly surprised by what you find hidden in those rows.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Next time you are staring at a jagged, visually overwhelming wall of Excel data, just remember you are only 3 minutes and a few plain English prompts away from absolute clarity.